A land of beauty, a growing population, enormous potential, unprecedented opportunities, a continent on the move. Today, Africa is fast becoming a globally competitive destination. It goes without saying that if you're not in Africa, you're not in business. In 2018, the Africa Investment Forum generated close to $39 billion in investment interest in just 72 hours. Global and regional leaders from the worlds of finance, business, industry, and the public sector helped accelerate momentum.
This is the first time that we hold an investment conference on the continent that is transactional and not just a talk show, where people come here to come and conclude deals, not even to do deals or talk about them.
Folks, so much has happened. Projects advanced to bankable stages. We're raising capital towards deals, and deals are moving towards closure. That's key. The Africa Investment Forum has now become the premier investment platform to pull capital into Africa.
In southern Africa, Thelo SA, a rolling stock firm, and Germany's Deutsche Bahn, a global railway industry leader, signed a new joint venture to boost infrastructure in South Africa. A $400 million cooperation agreement was signed between Africa 50 and the government of Rwanda in East Africa to develop and finance the Kigali Innovation City. An $800 million investment interest between the African Development Bank, Africa 50, the governments of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the Republic of Congo will help finance the first road and rail bridge project in Central Africa, linking the capitals of Kinshasa and Brazzaville. The Moroccan Agency for Solar Energy and the African Development Bank are collaborating to light up and power the Sahel through an innovative Desert to Power initiative. Desert to Power will stretch across the Sahel region, connecting 250 million people with electricity by tapping into the region's abundant solar resources. Ghana's $2.6 billion SkyTrain project in Accra is another collaborative initiative between Ghana's Sovereign Wealth Fund, acting as an anchor investor, and a South African consortium. These deals with several others across Africa are designed to crowd in other commercial and concessional investors.
Il y a un potentiel formidable en Afrique en matière d'énergie solaire, par exemple, ou même d'énergie éolienne dans certains pays, et qu'on peut effectivement beaucoup réduire le coût de la facture énergétique dans les différents pays africains par la mise en place de structures qui combinent des innovations et des énergies renouvelables.
Today, Africa offers higher investment returns than any other developing region. And the continent is set to become the world's largest free trade zone, with a goods and services market worth more than $3 trillion. The Africa Investment Forum is a game changer, a turning point that's redefining Africa's investment landscape.
This forum will definitely be of great importance to the continent. It will change the narrative about Africa.
What we need in Africa is massive investment. We need massive investment to help drive our infrastructure development so that we can create employment, so that we can eradicate poverty, so that we can create an inclusive society.
Once again, the 2019 Africa Investment Forum provides the perfect deal-making marketplace to unpack investment opportunities and meet the continent's annual multi-billion-dollar infrastructure demand. This year, the forum's platform offers a unique investment experience, including analytics, updates, and high-level boardroom sessions.
All eyes are on Africa. So let's make deals. Let's move capital into Africa. Now, let the deals begin.
A very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Africa Investment Forum 2019. A very good morning to His Excellency the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, His Excellency the President of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, His Excellency the President of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, and His Excellency the Prime Minister of Mozambique, Carlos Agostinho do Rosario. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. We also have the Premier of Gauteng, David Makura, joining us today, and of course, a big welcome to the man that makes it all possible here today, Akinwumi Adesina. He is the president of the African Development Bank, founding partners. So good to have you here. My name is Eleni Jokos. I am a correspondent with CNN. And of course, as we kick off the second edition of the Africa Investment Forum, it's good to take stock of the promises made and the promises delivered over the past 12 months. So we're talking about 49 transactions. We're talking about around $39 billion that was put on the table. And we're also saying that the Africa Investment Forum was at work for the last 12 months, making sure that they saw billions of dollars worth of deals through, that they were able to deliver on a lot of the things that we saw happening in the boardrooms over the past 12 months as well. The deal tracker was also a massive game changer in the past year. And ladies and gentlemen, as we get into this investment forum, we think about what's happened in 2019 and how the continent has made massive headway with the Continental Free Trade Agreement. It's historic. It's going to catapult the continent even further. And this is a time that we need bold leadership, brave private sector to ensure the prosperity of all Africans on the continent. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get to work. I'd like to now call on the gatekeeper of the most prosperous province on the continent, Gauteng, the Premier of Gauteng, David Makura. Sir, over to you.
Thank you very much, Eleni. The President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, the President of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, President Paul Kagame of Rwanda, President Nana Akufo-Addo of Ghana, the Prime Minister of Mozambique, Prime Minister Rosario, ministers, deputy ministers, ambassadors, high commissioners, premiers, governors, mayors, heads of multilateral development finance institutions, business leaders, investors, senior government officials, members of the media. Fellow Africans, I have the distinct honor to welcome you once more to the second edition of the Africa Investment Forum. Welcome to the biggest investment platform in our continent. Yes, welcome to the AIF Africa Investment Forum 2019. Africa's investment marketplace is taking place in South Africa once again, in the province of Gauteng, in the city of Johannesburg. This is where we held the inaugural Africa Investment Forum from the 7th to the 9th of November 2018, and there's no doubt that that was a phenomenal success, with deals worth more than $38 billion. It was not a talk shop. The sophomore installment of the Africa Investment Forum is much bigger and much better in many respects, including that it will have a focus on investing in women. Let me from the onset convey our gratitude to the African Development Bank, the national government of South Africa, for the enduring partnership we have had in the first and this second, and we are glad to be co-hosting this biggest investment forum. In particular and in person, I would like to thank the President of the AFDB, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, for his vision and tireless work in making sure that the second edition takes place and it surpasses the expectations and the record of the last. I would like to also thank our National Treasury under the leadership of Minister for Finance, Minister Tito Mboweni, for having worked with the Gauteng provincial government to deal with all the complex issues relating to the preparations. This year, we have more than 2,000 delegates from 109 countries, 48 of which are African countries, and 61 are countries in Asia, Europe, and the Americas. Isn't this a fantastic track record that has surpassed the last one in 2018? As Gauteng Province, it is an honor and privilege to be the host of this premier investment platform on behalf of South Africa, and indeed on behalf of Africa. The Gauteng City region is the 26th largest urban area in the globe with 15.2 million residents. We are South Africa's economic hub and the industrial workshop and financial nerve center of the SADC region. This is an economy which is an equivalent of the 7th largest economy in our continent. It is in Gauteng where manufacturing takes place, where goods and services made right here in Africa are produced in this economy. We are a prime destination for foreign direct investment and the recipient of some of the largest tourists coming into our country. We are also very active in unlocking higher rates of investments in various sectors as a sub-national economy. Increasing levels of investments into the South African economy and promoting inter-Africa trade is one of the priorities of President Cyril Ramaphosa, our president. President Ramaphosa has set a target of raising $100 billion in private sector investment into the South African economy over the next 5 years. Ladies and gentlemen, it does look like he will deliver on this target long ahead of the 5 years. Yes, we do need presidents in our continent who deliver on their commitments. Last week, our president hosted the second edition of the South Africa Investment Conference right here in Sandton at this very hall, where business made significant commitments around investment. We are excited that the Africa Investment Forum is making a direct contribution to South Africa's efforts and drive on investment, particularly relating to infrastructure investment. Above all, the AIF seeks to shift Africa from aid to investment by turning our continent's more than 100 billion infrastructure backlog into opportunities for investment. African business people need to be the first to seize these opportunities. African governments should focus on creating the right environment and governance culture for attracting, facilitating, and catalyzing private sector investment into the economies of our continent. There is no doubt that Africa is endowed with many natural resources, including minerals and agricultural resources. But we would like to repeat that Africa's greatest resources are its people, its youthful population, and the entrepreneurial and resilient women of Africa. So investing in our people with regard to education and healthcare, and promoting and funding small, micro, and medium enterprises into which millions of women and young people are involved is crucial for the success of our continent. The focus of the SMME development at this conference will be particularly an area of great interest so that we can integrate, including the informal sector, which is huge in Africa, and mainstream it into the economies of our continent. We view the Africa SME champions as a critical player in unlocking finance and other bottlenecks to unleash the power of the small, medium, and micro enterprises throughout our continent. Lastly, the second edition takes place at a very crucial time in the history of our continent, when 54 out of 55 African Union member states have signed the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. The AfCFTA is a game changer for African economies and requires a major shift in paradigm in how we work as governments. And in this regard, I want to include city governments and regional governments, not just national governments. And I'm very glad that there are several governors who are here from East Africa, from West Africa, as well as Southern Africa. The Africa Investment Forum is the most potent investment platform that brings investors and policymakers together to focus on the kind of deals that will change our continent forever. The AIF is helping to move Africa from talking to action. We are here not at a talk shop, but rather at an action lab. We are here to witness game-changing deals, not just speeches. It is in this regard that we as Gauteng Province will also work with other subnational governments in our continent, especially the major urban centers and city regions, in pursuit of a common African agenda, to support the work being done by our national governments. We are also ready to address some of the major challenges of migration, including some of the violence and attacks that took place on businesses here in our province. Our President Cyril Ramaphosa and other heads of states are working together to address the underlying issues that will ensure that this never occurs. Because we belong together as Africans, and we must make this continent work for all its people and deal with the challenges of migration collectively and in a humane manner. Africa is open for business. South Africa is open for business. This is time for Africa. You are all welcome. Asante sana. Merci beaucoup. Muntu obrigado. Thank you. Siyabonga. Realeboha.
Thank you so very much, Premier. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much once again. I know you've got your checkbooks ready and ready to commit more billions at this year's investment forum. But importantly, the reason that we're here today is because of the founding partners. And it's really important to know that among us, we have the executives and the CEOs of the founding partners, and they are also ready to help you get the conversations going in the boardrooms and also assist with financing. So a big thank you to the African Finance Corporation, AfricSim, the Development Bank of Southern Africa, the Southern African Trade and Investment Bank, the Islamic Development Bank, the European Investment Bank, and the African Development Bank. So thank you very much once again to the founding partners for making this happen. I'd like to now call on the President of the African Development Bank, Akinwumi Adesina. Sir, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Eleni. Thank you very much, my dear brother, Premier David Makhura. Your Excellency, President Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa, my very dear friend and brother, His Excellency President Paul Kagame of Rwanda, His Excellency President Nana Akufo-Addo of Ghana, His Excellency President Philip Nyusi of Mozambique, represented by the Prime Minister, His Excellency Carlos Agostinho dos Rosario, His Excellency President John Magufuli of the United Republic of Tanzania, represented by Minister Philip Mpango, His Excellency President Denis Sassou Nguesso of the Republic of Congo, represented by Minister Jean-Jacques Bouya, His Excellency President Philip Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of Congo, represented by Mr. Vital Kamerhe, the Premier of Gauteng Province, Honorable David Makura, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, represented by Dr. Mayaki, Mr. Tito Mboweni, Minister of Finance and the African Development Bank Governor for South Africa, my dear sister, big sister, Dr. Nkosana Dlamini Zuma, Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, my dear beautiful wife, Grace, honorable ministers, governors of the African Development Bank, executive directors of the African Development Bank, heads of diplomatic missions, of international agencies, and CEOs of multilateral finance development banks and financial institutions, CEOs and partners of the African Investment Forum, business leaders, investors, project sponsors, promoters, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you all, and very warm welcome to the 2019 Africa Investment Forum, and welcome to the beautiful city of Johannesburg, Africa's #1 financial center. I wish to thank all the heads of state and government for your participation. A special thanks to President Cyril Ramaphosa and the entire government of South Africa for hosting us so generously again this year. I wish to thank also the Premier of Gauteng Province, David Makura, and his team for their generous hospitality. Please join me in thanking them so warmly. Now, just moments ago, the heads of state showcased to the world investment opportunities in their respective countries. Shortly, you will see them as they walk into their boardrooms to chair as chief executive officers of their countries to speed up deals, to help to consolidate investment decisions, to assure investors on investment and regulatory environments for their planned investments to thrive. We are greatly honored to have with us His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, His Excellency President Nana Akufo-Addo, His Excellency Paul Kagame, and the Prime Minister Agostinho dos Rosario. When leaders decide, amazing things happen. Your being here with us for the Africa Investment Forum sends a powerful signal to the world that Africa means business, not business as usual, but business unusual. Thank you so very much for being here today. I'd like to thank our founding partners for the forum who are here also today: Africa 50, Afri-Exim Bank, the Trade Development Bank, the Development Bank of South Africa, the Islamic Development Bank, the Africa Finance Corporation, the European Investment Bank, and all of our sponsors for their engagements and for their contributions. Africa has been getting some very good news of late. The Prime Minister of Ethiopia, His Excellency Abiy Ahmed, won the Nobel Peace Prize. South Africa, Springboks, captained by Siya Kolisi, won the Rugby World Cup. Congratulations, champion President Cyril Ramaphosa. Congratulations, champion South Africa. Congratulations, President Ramaphosa, for this achievement, but also you are a businessman, and a businessman who understands how to bring business and investments to his country. Congratulations on your recently held South Africa Investment Conference. You are a businessman who does business. And good business, I must say. A good son of Africa, a great son of Africa, Masai Ujiri, president of Toronto Raptors, won the NBA championship. And Masai is right here in this hall this morning. Wherever you are, kudos to you, and I hope you have brought with you the NBA championship trophy for us. And of course, Eliud Kipchoge of Kenya, broke the marathon history, running under 2 hours. Whoa. Now Africa is rising, and Africa is shining. This is a new, more confident Africa, a continent now more aware of its place in the world and determined to be a global investment haven. Economic growth rates are encouraging. This year, 37 countries in Africa experienced growth rates of 3% and above, and in fact, 20 of them grew at above 5%. And guess what? 6 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world are in Africa. Commodity prices are recovering. Foreign indirect investments in Africa increased in 2018 by 11%, compared to 4% in Asia and a decline of 13% globally. So Africa is doing well on investments, but it still needs to do a lot more. Africa is ready to absorb a lot more of those investments. The risk perceptions of the continent, while high, are often exaggerated, and they do not match what data shows on risk and return performance on investments. Consider for a moment the Moody's Investment Service on project bank loans finance between 1983 and 2016 shows that Africa has one of the lowest project default rates in the world, much, much lower than Latin America, Asia, Eastern Europe, North America, and the Oceania. Yet investments are tilted to regions with much higher default rates. So it's not about real risks. It's all about perceived risks. Last year, when we all gathered here at the inaugural Africa Investment Forum, we secured investment interests for deals valued at $38.7 billion in less than 72 hours. A lot of progress is being made on this investment interest, with a highly dedicated team of partners working around the clock to accelerate financial closure of transactions. Let me cite just a few examples. The Africa Infrastructure Investment Fund to speed up investments in agriculture was presented here last year. It sought $500 million, and $500 million equity has been closed. Promise made, promise kept. The Africa Guarantee Fund for Investors sought $175 million to support small and medium-sized enterprises. The equity transaction has reached financial close. Promise made, promise kept. Here in South Africa, the Beef Agro-Processing Project, which sought $350 million, has also reached financial close. The Alicia Identity Fund, a private equity fund specifically targeting women businesses, put up right here for $72 million, has reached financial close. Promise made and promise kept. I was excited to see the marathons launched here last year at the forum. Today, they are now being produced with the establishment of manufacturing plants in South Africa and in Rwanda. Mr. President, promise made and promise kept. The railway project, launched by TeleDB to support Africa in is advancing, and we'll be discussing right here today the railway linking Tanzania, Rwanda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Promise made, promise kept. And of course, as I mentioned to you, Masai Ujiri was here last year when we challenged him that he should not come back this year unless he won the NBA championship. And guess what? He did. Promise made, promise kept. In Ghana, the $600 million transaction of cocoa board to help improve processing and value addition for cocoa has also reached financial close. Congratulations, President Akufo-Addo. I know you love chocolates, and President Cyril Ramaphosa was asking you that when he comes, he would love to have a lot of Ghanaian chocolates. So promise made to you and promise kept. The Africa Investment Forum is not a talk shop. We deliver on concrete transactions. Our teams are working hard and on target to accelerate and reach financial close of several investments before the end of this year. and complete financial closure for all investments, an incredible achievement for so many complex transactions. So we promise, so we deliver. You will soon hear, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, from 3 project sponsors who were here last year and how they progressed on their investments. I am pleased that this forum, we focus on changing the investment narrative for Africa. Africa has rebranded itself, not as perceived by others, but for itself. Africa has repositioned itself. And Africa is harnessing investors' interests and investments. So welcome to the Africa Investment Forum, the place for investors. If you can dream it, we can deliver it. I am delighted that we have at the forum several institutional investors from Africa and outside of Africa. The size of the assets under management in Africa is over $1.8 trillion. Globally, assets under management exceeds $145 billion. What's needed to close the $68 to $108 billion annual infrastructure finance gap for Africa is to leverage institutional investors. And for that, we must develop more bankable projects, develop wider pools of risk mitigation instruments, and standardize our product offerings as multilateral development banks and financial institutions. And we must do more, and we will, on synthetic securitization to transfer risk on assets to the private sector and balance short-term and long-term objectives with risk-return profiles. At the forum this year, we look forward to getting more institutional investors to take stakes in bankable projects. Africa offers an incredibly compelling investment case. The African Continental Free Trade Area opens up a combined market size of $3.3 trillion, the largest free trade area since the establishment of the World Trade Organization. Africa can no longer be ignored. The African Development Bank is geared up more than ever to help grow investments on our beautiful continent. Almost 2 weeks ago, the Board of Governors of the African Development Bank approved a general capital increase of 125% for the bank. This increased the capital of the bank up by $115 billion, from $93 billion to $208 billion. This is the highest capital increase in the history of the bank since its establishment in 1964. Your Excellencies, your very strong support as heads of state, for ministers of finance, governors, and executive directors of the bank from all our 80 shareholder countries made this possible, and I'd like to say thank you and thank you. What a great achievement, and what a historic moment for Africa. With this win behind our sail, the African Development Bank and its partners will do even more for Africa. We will support the private sector. We will de-risk investments more. We will work with our partners to syndicate more, leverage our capital. Together, through the Africa Investment Forum, we will speed up the development of bankable projects, secure financing, and accelerate financial close for projects. And we just simply cannot wait to see more deals discussed this year in the boardrooms. All the elements for a hugely successful forum this year are all in place. We've got you, the project developers and project sponsors. We've got you, the presidents and leaders of our countries. We've got you, the leaders of global multilateral finance institutions, commercial banks, and institutional investors. One cannot ask for more. I am therefore highly confident that with you all, we will secure very strong investment interests across the transactions in the boardrooms. And so, without taking any more time, let's shift our focus to the investment boardrooms. We are an action-driven forum. Now let the transactions begin. Welcome again. Thank you very much, et merci beaucoup.
Thank you so very much, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll notice that our itinerary has changed slightly, and of course, we are currently moving along quite smoothly. I'd like to now bring to your attention some of the things that I hear when I travel. A lot of the questions that I get, Eleni, how are things going in South Africa? Things don't look so good according to a lot of the headlines that we read. And I said, look, you've got to take a look through the noise. And once you sift through all the noisy headlines, you'll find a lot of bright spots, some diamonds, gold, a bit of platinum, a lot of various metals, but you'll also find our greatest assets, the people of this country. And it's not just the people on the ground, but it's also the people that are making promises, and we're hoping they're going to deliver. And one man that is pushing those promises is, of course, His Excellency, the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa. Sir, over to you.
Program Director, Your Excellencies, President Paul Kagame, President Nana Akufo-Addo, Prime Minister Dosario, and indeed the President of the African Development Bank, President Adesina. Our host and Premier of the Gauteng province, ministers, premiers and governors, distinguished guests and heads of various business entities and banks and development finance institutions, on behalf of the people of South Africa, it is indeed my privilege to welcome you to this second Africa Investment Forum. This forum is fast becoming the premier platform for engagement on Africa's growth as well as development. It does so because it brings together African governments, sovereign wealth funds, the private sector, financial intermediaries, and others to find ways to unlock the continent's of untapped economic potential. When I came in, President Adesina introduced me to a number of heads of these sovereign wealth funds, these various development finance institutions and banks. And as I shook their hands, I told them that I could feel money flowing from their hands to my hands. And I said that I'm going to go for a medical checkup after this to see whether it has flown into my bloodstream as well and into the bloodstream of our continent. If the success of last year's event is any indication, this forum's unique focus on deal-making, on bedding down transactions, through the highly impactful boardroom sessions is yielding tangible results. This is quite a unique forum and a unique process where we're able to sit in boardrooms and finalize deals and have those deals concluded and signed. Last year, there were quite a number of investors who came from 53 countries. The forum was instrumental in mobilizing funding for initiatives as diverse and as potentially impactful as the Accra SkyTrain, the Kigali Innovation City, the first road rail bridge project linking Kinshasa and Brazzaville, and the $320 million Africa Infrastructure Investment Fund. This is an indication of the breadth of investment opportunities that do exist in our continent, in areas such as mining, oil and gas, in infrastructure, in agricultural production, in manufacturing, in renewable energy, and a range of other profitable sectors. Much of the economic progress over the last few years has been made possible by developments in an area I would call the political sphere. This has been a good year for the consolidation of democracy across our continent. National, presidential, and parliamentary elections have been held in a number of countries, notably in Botswana, in Malawi, in Mauritania, in Namibia, in Nigeria, in Mozambique, and right here in South Africa. Global investor surveys consistently highlight political stability and security as important considerations for committing capital. Every election that passes peacefully and that reflects the will of the people is another major step towards the attainment of the African Union's vision of an Africa that is at peace with itself. It challenges the notion that Africa is unstable and a risky place to invest and to do business. The great interest that this forum has garnered since it was inaugurated last year is a clear indication that the international community of investors is optimistic about Africa's prospects. It's also excited about its potential and wants to be part of this wonderful success story that is emerging. Over the 40 years since the term emerging markets was first coined, the economies of our continent have evolved, they have also matured, but more importantly, they've also become increasingly diverse. Political stability in many African countries has enabled us to industrialize, as well as to pursue development policies that have brought millions of people out of abject poverty, resulting in rising income levels for many people on our continent. This in turn has attracted increased levels of investment in infrastructure that is needed to connect people and goods to markets. It has also resulted in mining production and in key sectors such as agriculture, tourism, manufacturing, and information technologies being attractive centers or areas for investment. Africa has indeed come into its own. It is pursuing growth and development in the interests of its people, and it is charting its own chosen course. And now we stand on the cusp of a new era of African integration. The coming into operation of the African Continental Free Trade Area will connect over 1.2 billion people and solidify a consumer market that will be worth over $3 trillion by 2030. And we are truly blessed that we've had a foresightful leadership that has charted Africa in this direction. And today, President Paul Kagame is the father, possibly the grandfather, and he'll soon be the great-grandfather of the African Continental Free Trade Area. And we thank you, President Kagame, for this. It will bring into being the largest free trade area since the formation of the World Trade Organization, as President Adesina said. Working with our friends and partners in the global investor community, we have an opportunity, in the words of Kenya's founding father, Jomo Kenyatta, to make ourselves the architects of the future. The AFCTA will pave the way to the free flow of goods and services, enabling businesses and entrepreneurs to access new markets. Consumers will benefit from the removal of trade barriers and business costs will be reduced. But by far the most and significant potential of the AFCTA will be in increasing the value of intra-Africa trade, which by some estimates is likely to rise by 15 to 25% by the year 2040. In doing so, the free trade area will encourage greater self-reliance. Under colonial rule, Africa's rich resources were plundered. They were shipped off to foreign destinations, including its own people, leaving countries impoverished and underdeveloped. Today, we are faced with a new challenge of being the net importers of products and goods that could be produced domestically. This puts pressure on national balance sheets and diverts economic priorities away from vital social spending. We are determined to reverse this, and we are going to reverse it. We want to produce our own food to feed our people, whether it is in the form of chocolates that are produced in Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire or any other food product. We want to generate our own agricultural products, and we are going to do so. I stress the chocolate part because President of Ghana, my brother Nana Akufo-Addo, has promised that when I visit him in the next few days, he's going to give me chocolates for breakfast, chocolates for lunch, and chocolates for dinner. So I'm looking forward to that. We also want to generate our own energy. We want to see greater local beneficiation in our mining and minerals industries. We want to produce our own goods for our own domestic markets and for export. We want to be able to stitch, to stamp, and to chisel the words proudly made in Rwanda, proudly made in Ghana, proudly made in Mozambique, proudly made in Togo, and proudly made in South Africa. Garments, mobile phones, computers, and cars, you name it, we want it to be made here in this beautiful continent of Africa. Now, through innovative and ambitious platforms like the Africa Investment Forum, we are able to collaborate to enable Africa to industrialize and to achieve greater heights of manufacturing, but also to achieve greater heights of regional integration. We must contribute to our own prosperity as we position ourselves to be the critical cog in the rebalancing of the global economy. Investment is a fundamental basis for sustained economic growth. It supports local businesses and industries. We want to see this leading to the empowerment of young people on our continent, but much more importantly, we want to see this leading to the empowerment of the women of our continent, because they are the ones who we need to empower if we are to engineer growth in our economies collectively as Africa. It creates jobs for our citizens and enables them to improve their lives. We are all acutely aware of the immense challenges we still face in overcoming poverty, inequality, and unemployment that is so rife on our continent. Weak economic growth still constrains the abilities of many African economies to increase social spending on poverty alleviation and many other needs. We also know the continent has a massive infrastructure backlog. Infrastructure is a vital driver of economic growth, and we have prioritized attracting infrastructure investment so that we are able to achieve the socio-economic targets in Agenda 2063 and the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. It is clear that we cannot do this alone. Many African countries have constrained national budgets with little room to maneuver. This means our development finance institutions must expedite project preparation, and our regulatory environment must also facilitate transformative investment decisions. These finance institutions must assist African countries in developing credible infrastructure project pipelines in line with continental priorities. They should be guided in this by the high 5 priority areas of the African Development Bank, which are to light up and power Africa, feed Africa, industrialize Africa, integrate Africa, and improve the quality of life for the people of our continent. We must adopt innovative measures to crowd in private capital, including through private and public partnerships, to speed up economic and social infrastructure development on the continent. This must be done, though, in a manner that promotes greater regional integration, yet enacting policies to speed up infrastructure development will not be sufficient. We must also ensure that there is strong political will to realize the expected benefits. We must ensure that as we harness the 4th industrial revolution, that we do not further entrench divisions in our respective societies. Rapid technological advance is undoubtedly an opportunity for Africa to expand connectivity, to transition to newer and more sustainable methods of development, and scale up the provision of quality services to our people. But it also brings with it the potential of uneven development, with cities and towns benefiting at the expense of rural and undeveloped regions on our continent. It carries the risk of increasing and entrenching inequality. Those with skills, resources, and access to the digital economy may prosper, while those without skills and on the periphery of the formal economy could be left behind. We must make a concerted effort to ensure that the investment we secure in ICT systems and infrastructure, in automated manufacturing, in robotics, in artificial intelligence, and in smart technologies complement our vision for our continent, of our people, the planet, and prosperity. Ladies and gentlemen, over the next 2 days, we will be working to ensure that deals are concluded, as President Adesina said, and that project implementation begins without delay. Behind the scenes, from Accra to Kigali, from Lome to Maputo, from Cape Town to Cairo, we are working to lay the groundwork for the operation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. The time is now to move with speed to ensure that we unlock our potential and attain the promise of the free trade area. It is a significant milestone which, if approached with common purpose, will usher in greater prosperity and economic development for Africa. Indeed, our continent is ripe for investment, but more importantly, it is also brimming with enormous profitable opportunities. Across Africa, economic reforms have been enacted to boost investor confidence, to broaden access to local economies, to strengthen institutional capacity, to remove bureaucratic and other investment impediments, and to clamp down on corruption. I say this advisedly because this is precisely what we here in South Africa have decided to focus on, to engineer growth into our economy, which has been having lackluster growth over a number of years. We have taken a conscious decision that these reforms that ordinarily propel growth in any economy are being embraced by South Africa. And indeed, as we look around the continent, we find that our continent is moving ahead with a number of similar reforms. We are determined to make our respective countries attractive to investors and to ensure that they are not mismanaged. At the end of these 2 days, let us move beyond pledges. Let us leave with deals that add to national investment pipelines. Let us, when we meet here again next year, be able to add to the impressive catalogues of projects that are under implementation. Africa is a continent that has shaken off its troubled past. It is a place that has known deprivation and turmoil for far too long. But it is also a continent of resilience. It is also a continent of people who are courageous. It is also a continent of people who are innovators. It is also a continent of people who are determined to succeed and to prosper. As the investor community, your presence here shows your unwavering will to help us and to support us to succeed. I invite you, therefore, to join us as we pass the flickering torch of progress across every border of this great continent until the light of development and economic prosperity illuminates in every African village, in every African town, in every African city, in every African household. Join us in this journey as you help us pass on this flickering light, which is soon to be a very bright light on the African continent. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for those illuminating words and for making promises for the entire African continent and delivering on the dream. Ladies and gentlemen, promises made, promises kept. And last year, during the closing panel, I had the honor of announcing a very exciting project by a good friend, but also a really important businessman and, of course, CEO on the continent. Ashish Thakkar announced that he was going to be launching 2 factories in Africa, one in Kigali and one in Durban, and a phone made on the continent for Africans by Africans. And this is our next session. We're going to be hearing from 3 incredible people that have not only kept their promises, but have been able to deliver on them beyond our initial expectations. So, Ashish Thakkar, the CEO and founder of Mara Phones, please join me on stage. Tokunbo Ishmael, managing partner of Alithia IDF. She started a private equity fund focused on women and in fact was able to raise tens of millions of dollars in boardrooms here at the Africa Investment Forum. And we also have Masai Ujiri, the president and the president of the NBA champions, the Toronto Raptors, And also bringing the trophy, by the way, I think back home, because you heard that the true home of mankind is actually Botswana. So really delighted to have you here, and here is our trophy. Thank you very much for joining me, and what an incredible 12 months it's been. You guys have been so busy at work. You've put a lot of us here in this room to shame, at least me. Ashish, I want to start with you, because we've been in contact quite a bit about your project. And, you know, making the announcement on stage last year and being able to deliver on it. In fact, you're in full production, things are up and running, lots of women working for you, in fact, taking over your life, which is great. Tell me about how you did it.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Thank you, Eleni. Thank you to the Africa Investment Forum, the Africa Development Bank, and the respective heads of state who are present. It has been an amazing year. It's last year at the Africa Investment Forum 2018, we announced our intent to put up 2 smartphone manufacturing plants, which are going to manufacture high quality but affordable smartphones in Africa for the first time. It's something that's never been done on the continent, and it's something that can create a lot of positive social impact, that if our people have high quality and affordable smartphones, it can truly be life-changing. So we announced it last year, and on October 7th, His Excellency President Paul Kagame opened the factory in Mara Phones, Rwanda, in Kigali. And on October 17th, President Ramaphosa opened Mara Phones South Africa in Durban. So we now have almost over 400 to 450 employees. 60% are women, which is the highest gender ratio anywhere in the world.
Please let's get a round of applause for that. This is why the phones will never break, right?
This is why our quality is better than everybody else's. So 60% women, 90% youth, and state-of-the-art facilities. And this isn't assembling. This isn't clipping a few pieces together. This is actually making the motherboards, making the subboards, over 1,000 pieces together.
Fantastic, well done. Tokunbo, I mean, what's interesting here is that this investment forum last year was a fantastic platform for you to engage with investors, and people put money towards your ideas. Is it because you had bankable projects? Tell me about the process in getting people to believe in what you wanted to achieve.
Thank you. Before I start on that, I'd first of all like to congratulate President Adesina on a great conference, and to thank him and his team for supporting us and anchoring the Alethea IDF Fund. I'd also like to congratulate the Alethea IDF team, my co-partner Polo Letica, who's based here in South Africa, and the rest of the team. So this time last year, we were running a boardroom. We'd come to the conference, Polo and I, to present to a room full of investors. At the time, the only investor that had committed fully to supporting us was the African Development Bank, anchoring us. And they provided us the platform then to present to a number of investors. And when we came that time, we had about 10% of funds raised, and by now to this week, we are closing on over 70% of the funds that we were looking for, so to reach our target of $100 million. Now, what is
$100 million?
$100 million, that's correct. What is the Alethea IDF Fund? So when myself and Polo started thinking about investing, we'd already been investing in Africa. I'd invested in Europe and UK and the US, and I'd spent about 15 years private equity investing. And I was at a forum like this, and someone asked me, how many women have you invested in? And I realized I hadn't invested in any women. And then I started thinking, why was that? And at the same time, Polo had been investing in women here in South Africa, and we realized as well that we were meeting many female entrepreneurs who were running formidable businesses. Yes, Africa is full of lots of female micro-entrepreneurs, but these women were running formidable businesses, and frankly not waiting for the free trade agreement, because they were already exporting between the different countries, but they were not receiving any finance. So with the support of the African Development Bank, we started thinking about how we would address this problem, and now we have Alethea IDF. which is a fund focused on women empowerment by, first of all, thinking about investing in female founders. Over 40% of businesses on the continent are run by women. Only about 2% of them get funding. And so looking at how we can scale those businesses, looking at essential sectors where those women are affected, but also looking across the whole value chain of businesses and thinking, how do you empower women across the value chain? And I want to say, there's a McKinsey estimate that says that if all the women, if all the people, all the assets in the country, in the economy, globally, if they are utilized, we look at global GDP rising by over 26%. And I just want you to picture for a moment the lineup at the World Cup rugby recently. If half of that rugby team, South African rugby team, was not on the field, there's no way they would have won. And so women have been an underutilized asset on this continent. And our fund, the Alethi IDF Fund, is proactively seeking out these entrepreneurs to build scalable businesses for international and intra-Africa trade.
Brilliant. And that's an invite, of course, for you to...
For further investment.
For further investment,
in
100
fact.
million. I mean, we can get that up to a lot more, yeah? So, Masai, congratulations, firstly. Fantastic to have the trophy home in Africa, where it belongs.
Thank you.
You are the only African team president in American sports franchise history. And what's incredible about your story is that you haven't forgotten where you come from, and you've created the Giants of Africa. You've been working so closely with various governments to create awareness with regards to the NBA and to scout out more talent on the continent. What promises did you make to yourself and to people around you that you've delivered on? I mean, we obviously know you've done a lot, but there's a lot of things that are happening in the background that you've also done from a personal perspective.
I think first of all, I want to say thank you to Dr. Adeshina. This is incredible to be able to come home and have an opportunity to talk to everybody and see everybody at this time. I know with everybody it's incredibly difficult. Leaving my team, and by the way, I have to mention that we beat the Lakers about 4 hours ago. So if there are any Laker fans here, you can leave the building. So many people work on, I think, the success and the growth of sports on the continent. And I really want to acknowledge His Excellency Paul Kagame here for his push to help us get where we want to get to and keep going. I want to say something. Sports is the next big thing in Africa, and I think investors here need to pay attention. Pay close attention to sports because it's going someplace. When I look at America, and I look at the Western world, and I look at the ecosystem of sports, there's no way, with all the talent we have on this continent, there's no way that we should not have everything that's going on there here. And that means the NBA, the Premiership. I see millions and millions of Arsenal fans, Manchester United fans, people everywhere. We should be supporting teams here in Africa, and that should be our vision. Everybody should, I don't know if Amadou Fall is here, but everybody should know this man is the president of the new Basketball Africa League, that I'm telling you, if you're an investor, invest, because it's coming. The talent in Africa is incredible. On my team, I have Pascal Siakam, Oji Anunoby, Serge Ibaka. We have coaches. We have to do it ourselves. Yeah, we have to do it ourselves. We Africans have to represent and to believe in it. It's important. So that trophy there is not something that we just craft every day. I remember inviting President Kagame to All-Star couple years ago, and the dunk contest and the game was going on, and he sat down and he was very quiet, and it's very cold in Canada, as we all know, and I was worried that I was always making sure that he was okay, and I said, Excellency, is there anything wrong? And he said, he put his head down, he paused, and he said, how much does it cost to build this arena? And I wasn't expecting that question, but I said, I think about 300-400 million. And he said, okay, we need to talk. And we started talking about this, and I'm sure everybody has seen, in 1 year, about 6 months really, realistically, he built an incredible arena in Kigali. So what I'm saying is we need to invest in sports. The talent is like gold and like diamond on the continent. When you see how long and how tall these Senegalese or Rwandans or Somalians or South Sudanese, and how strong the Nigerians are, or Cameroonians are, or Ghanaians are, there is no way. You see how many football players are playing in Manchester United or Manchester City or Barcelona, all the Africans. We even have a former African professional football player that's a president on the continent. This should be the biggest ecosystem on this continent because it will create jobs and it will help our youth. And the great Nelson Mandela says, it's the biggest thing in this world that brings people together and makes us happy.
And we just saw that happening in South Africa with the Rugby World Cup, and it truly is phenomenal. And I wonder how we can get more women involved.
In sports?
In sports and in the economy. And I ask this question because I wonder if we need to set new targets in the next year, and we've got, someone who perhaps would be able to start focusing a lot more on women, within the sporting field. I'm going to put you guys on the spot now because I want new commitments. Things that perhaps you haven't thought of.
I'll start it off, 100%. You are 100% right. When I took over from the Toronto Raptors, we had one woman, and she was a secretary, okay? And it offended me. Yeah, it really offended me because you know what? All of us men here, we go home, well, every time we go home, we can say our wives are our bosses, right? Yeah, my wife is my boss at home. Yeah. They run our homes, they do everything, they are incredible. But then when we come to our workplace, we have these huge egos that where we don't want to give them that power to show their abilities. And so now I've hired 15 women with my organization, and I think it's important. They give us success. Yeah, they are calmer. They make better decisions. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and they make us make better decisions. Yeah, and we should give them a platform to succeed. And I'm telling you, African women are resilient. They are unbelievable in their thinking. And we, as African men, have to think about that, really think about that. Not just say it. We don't just come here and talk on stage. Do it. Do it.
Well, like I said earlier, yes, thank you for that. And like I said earlier, if only 2% of the businesses that are run by women are being funded, there's no way that we can succeed. And you're absolutely right. There's also, if you have diversity in the boardroom, which is the real room where women should be, you have better decision-making, you have better corporate governance, and also you have enhanced innovation. And so we do have to have the women there. And if you're talking about sports, I mean, we had quite a few women last year at the Olympic sports, with a team there, and there are women that are running sports facilities, certainly in Nigeria, and I know here in South Africa. So certainly we'll be looking to back those kinds of women as well.
So Tokunbo, one of the things that we keep talking about, and it's fantastic, we're in the Sandton Convention Center, we get to speak to the top CEOs, the top politicians making decisions. But I always think about the woman that is in the rural areas, that is bearing the brunt of raising children, that isn't able to experience true economic prosperity because of her reality. How do we get her involved in this conversation and keep her in mind? And of course, President Ramaphosa also alluded to it. How do we keep her in mind as we engage in these conversations in the boardroom? Can we change her life and her reality?
Absolutely. So when I spoke about how we think about the value chain of businesses, we think about the value chain and women's participation both as producers and as consumers. When I think about producers in the agribusiness world, if you look at the small-scale farmers, they are the women that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And our role is, if we can fund the businesses that empower these women to be able to be the producers at their full potential, then we're impacting on them. But also as consumers, because these women are also consumers. They're not just workhorses. They want access to better health, access to education, access to financial services. And so our fund is not just saying, look, we're only going to look for female founders. We're also saying, wherever a woman can be impacted, we are directing money to those channels. So we're impacting women not from the factory floor all the way up to the boardroom.
Fantastic. Ashish, are you taking on Huawei? And if so, how do we infiltrate an African-made phone across the borders on the continent? And is the CFTA something you're excited about? I mean, what's your game plan?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, just before I go into that, I mean, when we talk about the gender ratio, the highest women participation in any smartphone manufacturer globally is 28%. When we tried to commit saying we're going to do 50% plus and then achieving the 60%, and it actually shows these women are not just, they're trained engineers, electrical engineers, etc. So the skills are out there. It's a mindset shift that we need to kind of push. To your point about the strategy and the vision, I think, look, if being a made in Africa phone, obviously everybody initially has a hint of hesitation saying, you know, where did we cut corners? And that's the best part. We have not compromised on quality at all. We've got an extremely high quality smartphone, which is at a very affordable price. The proof of that pudding is we've got a site called maraphones.com, which allows you to order the phone and it's tied up with DHL so it can be delivered anywhere in the world. We have so far exported to 41 countries. Wow. 41 countries. And the top 5 countries in terms of retail buying is Germany, the United Kingdom, the United States, Italy, and Switzerland. So it shows you that quality-wise, it's absolutely there. And you know, we're obviously a much smaller company to the larger global players for now. We are punching above our weight, but we're confident that the way our continent will support this in a huge way. And given the fact that Korea has Samsung, China has Huawei and Tecno, the US has Apple, finally Africa has Mara phones.
Fantastic. Okay, so I want us to commit to new things for next year. So you've got 12 months to deliver on your promises made today. So who would like to start? I'm going to take you on next year, by the way. Masai, you're looking next. The trophy's next to you. More trophies?
Obviously, more trophies is what we always shoot for. But honestly, like my interest is in Africa, and I want to support Amadou Gallo Fall with the basketball league and the NBA coming to Africa. I think that league is going to be spectacular. For me, I'm really calling on people here to really invest in this, because we are going to see that kind. I don't know that it's next year that we'll see it on a big stage, but it's really coming. My second, I thank President Kagame for having that arena. I challenge, I think a couple of the presidents left, but I challenge these presidents to please build arenas, support sports And please, no cabinet reshuffles. We don't want cabinet reshuffles where you take a Minister of Agriculture and put him in sports when you don't know anything about sports. Yeah? Please find experts, okay? Yeah, please, please, I beg you. I'm not trying to put anybody down. I'm saying sports has always been put on the side, okay? If you bring somebody that doesn't know anything about sports, it's hurting the youth of Africa because we need to progress. So bring an expert of sports, to be the Minister of Sports, or let that person hire an expert to advise him. It's or her. It's very, very important for us. We're not like finance or some of the other things, like where you can bring sports needs experts, and we need that in. Please, please, I'm begging all the presidents. I'm appealing here. Yeah, please put experts in sports. Don't do any cabinet reshuffles anymore in sports. Okay? Please.
Okay, all right, I've got a question. How many new arenas do you want to see in Africa in the next year, or at least the process of getting it constructed? And this is a great platform to try and convince people in this room to perhaps invest, and maybe that could be something you could, deliver on next year.
Well, we have six teams that we're starting with in BAL, but if we can target 10, I think it's possible in Africa. With all the progressive leaders we have, I think it's very possible that we have 10 new arenas in Africa. When we sit down here next year, we'll have 10 new ones and another trophy maybe.
Thank you. Okay, quantifiable targets. Thank you. Ashish. Should I say Mara Mars, off to Mars? Are you going to take, were you going out of this world? What's the next plan?
So yeah, I mean, as many of you know, I signed up to be a founder astronaut for Virgin Galactic to go into space as Africa's second astronaut. That trip is taking place next year. I keep on reminding everybody that I didn't negotiate too hard. I did buy a return ticket, so I am coming back. But the best part is that it's going to make the Mara phone literally out of this world. So no, I think as a Rwandan entrepreneur, as a Rwandan headquartered company, we're very excited to be punching well above our weight. We're excited about the continent. Scaling up our factory in Rwanda is first priority. Scaling up our factory in South Africa with the support of the large telecom companies, retailers, and banks here. And with the support of President Adesina and the Africa Development Bank, we're excited that within 2 years, Mara Phones will open a factory in Nigeria as our third manufacturing plant.
That's incredible, thank you. And in terms of number of phones delivered?
So as you mentioned, another brand I can't remember, but numbers, hopefully we want to exceed that, those numbers.
And Techno, there are a few. I'm allowed to mention all the brands, you don't have to mention them. Fantastic, well I really hope that it happens in the next year. Over to you, ma'am.
So there's much talk about the pay gap, and Ashish has mentioned about, employing more women. So one of the first things that we are committed to doing is making sure that there are more women who are actually paying the wages, so that's a big way in which the pay gap is closed. It's not just about how much women are making, but the women who are the bosses. So we will be investing in more women-led businesses. More importantly, what we will be doing as well is that we commit to make sure that we actually do make use of the free trade agreement, and the companies that we invest in, those women will be exporting within the continent and beyond. So we're looking to make more women the bosses and more trade across Africa. So.
Fantastic. And how much more are you planning to get on the table in this?
So by this time next year, we will be over $100 million.
Fantastic. So. Well, thank you very much for this. And I know, Masai, lastly, I know you've scouted a few new players for the NBA, and they're going to be announced right now at this forum. Do you want to make the announcement? You've even gotten jerseys printed, in fact. I hope you're ready. This is going to be incredible. You're going to be on the world stage. Masai?
Okay, yeah, so I scouted 2 players here. I think a couple have left. I want them to come up. I have
We have representatives.
Adeshna here.
Adeshna.
And I have President Kagame here too. So you guys come up.
Yes. And if
They are going to
Premier
be playing
Makura-
for the Raptors. I'm taking them back with me.
And if Premier Makura could please come up and collect for President Ramaphosa as well. For President Ramaphosa. And by the way, Your Excellencies, the way that you're going to be communicating with your new boss is with a Mara phone. And Ashish has calibrated new phones for you as well. And we believe in you. I hope you're going to get us that trophy back into the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for my incredible panelists. And please stay on stage. I'd like to call on all our partners as well, our founding partners, for a photograph. Thank you so very much for joining us for the opening ceremony and opening session. I wish you success, and I hope to see in the next few days a lot more billions on the table and a lot more fabulous ideas to push the continent forward. Thank you so very much.